Hello, and I am back here on Poem Praise 2, and peace and blessings still be upon you. I certainly like to thank you for tuning back in, and we're going to move right along next to Ida B. Wells-Barnett, which was a journalist and a civil rights activist during the time period of 1862 to 1931. And let me move that, keep on. Christian and moral forces should insist that this nation do its duty to exalt justice and preserve and violate the sacredness of human life. Ida B. Wells-Barnett. Now, it was called a red record, the first complete list of lynchings in the United States during a 3-year period, and the bloody title fit. In the 10 years from 1890 to 1900, 1,217 African Americans were murdered by lynch mobs. Compiled by Ida Wells-Barnett in 1895, this report set the tone for her lifelong crusade against lynchings. Now, born a slave in Holly Springs, Mississippi, Ida Wells struggled to gain an education. When she was 16, her parents died within a day of each other. Lying about her age, Wells became a teacher. She was a sole supporter of 5 brothers and sisters. Her pay was $25 a month. In 1884, Wells moved to Memphis, where she continued to teach. When she complained of poor conditions in the school, however, she was fired. In the meantime, she had begun writing for the Living Way newspaper. With the little money she had managed to save, she bought an interest in the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight, which also published her work. Within 9 months, subscriptions to the Free Speech had increased by 2,000. Threats against her life also increased. Nonetheless, when 3 African American men were dragged from jail in 1892 and lynched, Wells did more than complain. She named the men who were directly involved and the city officials who refused to take action. She also wrote articles urging African Americans to boycott the new streetcar line and, if possible, to leave the city entirely. Within 2 months, approximately 2,000 African Americans had moved away, and the streetcar company was almost bankrupt. At the time, many people accepted lynching as a satisfactory way of punishing African American criminals. But Wells knew that the men who were lynched in Memphis were not criminals. They had been killed because they had set up a successful grocery store that was taking business away from a competing white-owned store. If the men hanged in Memphis had been innocent, thought Wells, then many other lynch victims might have been innocent as well. Now, determined to uncover the truth, she began traveling across the country, interviewing eyewitnesses and visiting the scenes of various lynchings. Of the 728 murders she investigated, she found that only 1/3 involved African Americans actually accused of crimes, let alone convicted of them. So most lynch victims were murdered for quarreling with whites. Now, quarreling, that means fighting, having a bicker, talking amongst, so kind of lost their lives for talking, for quarreling. Almost seemed to me like a debate, Wouldn't that be like a debate? You have your opinion, I have mine, but I'm going to keep it going on in the story. Okay, most lynch victims were murdered for quarreling with whites, for making threats, or because of race prejudice. Not only men, but also women and children have been murdered by mobs. Now, Wells continued to write editorials attacking those who offered excuses for lynch mobs. One day she went a little too far, and an angry mob retaliated by burning her newspaper office. Luckily, she was out of town when it happened, and she knew she would have to leave Memphis for her own safety. Moving to New York, she continued to make herself heard. On June the 5th, 1892, the New York Age carried a long article written by Wells. In it, she revealed the names, dates, places, and brutal details of hundreds of lynchings. 10,000 copies of the paper were sold, including 1,000 in Memphis alone. In addition to writing, Wells traveled to England to gain support for her anti-lynching campaign. In 1895, Wells married lawyer and editor Ferdinand. I'm going to spell it for you. It's Ferdinand. His first name, middle name Lee, last name Barnett. And with his support, she organized women's clubs and political groups committed to helping African Americans. Her work in stressing the need for a national African American organization was instrumental in the founding of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, in 1909. In her unceasing struggle to outlaw lynching, Wells-Barnett faced the difficult and often dangerous task of trying to change people's thinking as well as their behavior. Because of her efforts, lynching is now regarded as a vicious crime that no decent person can ignore, justify, or excuse. I certainly like to thank you for your attention and for listening here on Poem Praise 2 regarding Ida B. Wells-Barnett, the journalist and the civil rights activist during the time period of 1862 to 1931. Next in line on our extraordinary African Americans is Mary Church Terrell, or Terrell. Last name is Terrell. Now, she was a civil rights activist and an educator during the time period of 1863 to 1954. And she is next on our extraordinary African Americans. So until I speak with you guys again, I want you to be blessed, and I'll be talking with you soon, okay? All right. In a minute. And I certainly like to thank you.